love to listen about growing almonds.
All right, good morning.
Morning.
Certainly this is not as popular a subject. Growing nuts in Orange County. There's not many we can grow. So you can grow, had some success growing peanuts. The peanuts do like Georgia weather where it doesn't drop below 80 degrees day or night from May through October. So peanuts often are empty shells in this area. But the certain tree nuts we do quite well with the almonds, macadamias, pecans, and walnuts. Walnuts I have a hard time getting. We ordered them this year, we ordered them last year, got nothing from my suppliers. Apparently there is a walnut shortage. Pecans I haven't had much trouble. The macadamias, a little bit harder to get grafted trees nowadays. These are grown from seed. We may try grafting some, but our suppliers that do grafted macadamias have pretty much disappeared. At least the ones that we used to use. But they will produce from seed too. And then the almonds, several almonds do well. So we start with the almond trees. So almonds are closely related to peach trees, and they look kind of like a peach. And you kind of treat them like a peach, although the way we prune almond trees, and usually in a homeowner situation, probably let them grow about 8 to 10 foot tall and wide. Most of the orchards like to have about 4 main branches coming off the trunk, and those 4 go to 8, and then they go to 16, and they keep them about like that. They would be trimming off a lot of this little stuff off the main trunk so it's not so crowded. But this will all produce, so you can just leave it for now. But as they grow, the main thing is they don't want the tree to get too full. So if the tree is just a solid ball, the production's not as good. So what they like to see are trees with basically foliage arms coming out, four foliage arms in 4 directions with gaps in between those, so the light can get in there and make these more productive. If it's just a solid ball, you get fruiting across the top, but nothing inside. So they try to limit the amount of branching on there. Now most almonds don't do well here because we don't have the chill. This is one that's called Me Plus Ultra, and we know it's a low chill one. I'm amazed that it's already starting to bloom. Because this we have maybe 100 hours of chill this winter, and this thing is supposed to need 250 hours. So either it doesn't need it that much, or we've somehow gotten 250 hours. But it's like this week, our customers have been bugging us for tomatoes so much, we finally brought them in. Of course now, next week is supposed to be 5 days of possible rain. That's probably, we should have ordered tomatoes back in December to make it rain, but anyway, so we have the 2 almonds we carry. Now this one I don't usually carry that much because the book says they don't recommend it for low chill climates. It's kind of weird, but this is Me Plus Ultra. The one we generally carry that I have in bare root and in containers more of is Garden Prince, which is a natural dwarf. This one supposedly can get bigger than that. So I have both available, Me Plus Ultra and Garden Prince. And in the Kings, we've had very good success with Garden Prince. I've had people grow it in Aliso Viejo and say that's done well there too. And the main problem with almonds is that if the parrots find you, you're in big trouble.
Parrots?
Yeah. A lot of birds will love almonds.
Oh.
So one homeowner had one almond tree, says, boy, this thing really produced a lot, but I didn't get to eat any, so I better buy 4 more of them. so that he's got too many for the birds to eat all at once. That was his strategy, have more trees.
Does a large dog work for keeping away the birds?
It might, but probably neighbors. Anyway, that almonds, I mean, nut plants in general don't require as much pruning as other production plants. You don't have to thin them, they're not, so they're easy to grow that way. We don't do any special spraying on almond trees. Oh, well, okay, almond trees, the two things they can get mildew on the foliage because we're close to the ocean, and they can get spider mites because their leaves are so dense that spider mites sometimes find them. For either one, we usually hit them with neem oil. That will take care of those two. And that's about it on
So
almonds.
they don't need to be sprayed for peaches growth?
No, we never have. And I haven't seen it. Yeah, I just haven't seen that on there. Of course, we don't carry as many almonds as we do peaches, so, but I haven't heard of any dormant spray procedure on them either. Okay, then on the pecans and walnuts, these are much larger trees.
Walnuts.
So what we say about pecans pretty much is same for walnuts too. There's only one, possibly two walnuts that do well in the area. I don't know that this walnut was developed in Placentia, but it's called the Placentia walnut. That one has done the best. There's another one, I believe, called Mohawk that has a chance here too. But if we have a choice, we'd rather carry the Placentia because that's proven itself. Pecan wise, so this is walnut. Pecan, this one here is Western Schley. And that has done well in the area too. There's one other one that's supposed to do decently, but we prefer this one. Now, they're self-fertile, but like corn, it's nice to have a bunch of them around because the pollen is windblown. So if you have the wind coming from one direction, then one side of the tree will get pollinated better than the other. So they want you to have blocks. Now, you know, homeowners, what can you do? You can put 2 or 3 in a circle, I guess, or a triangle. But still, you know, so one tree by itself produces nuts, but you're not going to get production like you would in an orchard situation. So the almonds, I believe, are centered about every 10 feet in orchards. Pecans and walnuts about 25 to 30 foot apart if you're going to have more than one. Now, there's a lot of controversy on how to prune these, although, you know, most orchards are finding out that if you don't prune much, you don't lose any crop, and you don't have to pay for pruning. So they've had some studies recently where they just didn't prune the trees much, and they said we actually got more nuts without having to spend money on the pruning crews. But in the old days, what they would do is when they first planted them, they would make sure that the stems, the main stems, were no closer together on the trunk than 16 inches. So now if this was, you know, if you made this the main trunk and this one just a side branch, no problem. But if you allow these to grow bigger, as pecans and walnuts get older, their stems get about this big, and if they're this close together, there's no room to develop. So they'll fall off anyway. I mean, you know, it's not a big deal. They'll probably kill each other. The stems will just kill off the smaller stems. But they said, so all the small stems that are on the tree, don't cut them off because they do contribute to the strength and size of the trunk. They can make some nuts. Just don't let them get too big. But again, nature will probably take care of it for you. Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. Continue.
Go ahead.
wouldn't they cannibalize the little stems, the bigger ones?
Yeah, they can swallow them up. They can just, it can become part of a bigger stem. But the danger is if this thing starts to grow as big as the bigger ones, yeah, they might split off the tree and cause some more damage.
Oh,
But in general, if they're small like this, they probably will never develop. And the book says, yeah, if you see some stems you don't want, clip them at 15 inches so they can't get too big, too massive, so they won't compete with the bigger stems. So they like to see a delayed vase shape. A delayed vase shape means that you have one fairly central trunk going up, and this is close enough. This can be the central trunk, and branches coming off about every 1.5 feet in a spiral fashion. So one branch going this way, one branch going that way, one branch going this way, all the way up the tree. That's a delayed vase shape. A true vase would be where a tree goes from 1 to 2 to 4 to 16, evenly like that. But delayed vase is where you keep a fairly straight center trunk, fairly, not perfectly, and then the branches go off to the sides from there. In orchards, I don't think this is important at home backyards, but they said the most important thing on walnuts and pecans is don't let the wind tilt them. So, in an orchard, generally there's no good wind breaks to keep the wind from blowing through there real fast. So one thing they worry about always is the trees getting blown like this from the wind, and then 100 years from now those to be that shape. So they say what they do is when they plant a walnut or a pecan, after 1 year they get, when they plant them, it's usually like a 2-foot trunk that they cut them to, and then they have the new growth go straight up from that. Whichever the wind is blowing from, if the wind's blowing from this side, they'll actually put a stake, lean it right up against the tree so the tree can't blow the other direction. And they said that what they'll do too is the first permanent branch they'll keep, they'll have it growing toward the prevailing wind so that it can't catch it so badly. So that will help keep the tree from blowing over. In a home, probably not a big deal. There's enough buildings usually around homes that the wind's not going to be that nasty. But just keep that in mind because trees live a long time, and you want to be pretty, you want to be straight. Now pecans and walnuts, you can see how big this pot is. This is a 8-gallon pot, but it is really tall because when they send us the trees, we'll have a tree like this, and then the root system will be really long. They really grow them in loose soil. I don't know if that's essential to do, but most of the orchards that you see are at the bottoms of valleys where the soil is next to rivers. Like if you go to Lake Elsinore, you see a lot of walnut trees there. That bottom of that canyon or little valley there is probably just filled with sand or gravel, so the soil is really deep there. So they can dig holes. You can probably dig a hole there 10 foot deep with a shovel, and that's what these like. So if you live anywhere near rivers, these are better than if you live on a hilltop where it's clayish. So I'd imagine by the Santa Ana River, that's a great place to grow walnuts. In fact, one of my customers, friends who lives 2 blocks from the Santa Ana River has got all kinds of walnut trees, things I've never heard of. And he grows walnuts that's not supposed to grow here. But the Santa Ana River is a cold basin compared to the rest of Orange County, so you can get away with a lot if you're that close to the riverbed and you got that kind of soil.
Final question. Jumping back to the almonds thing, if I could.
Sure.
What's the better tasting almond?
I haven't noticed any difference at all.
I'll just take the ultra then.
I haven't noticed. I don't know. They don't rate them much on flavor in the books. It's all on how tender they are, how big they are, how sweet they are. But I haven't seen much on flavor. It's interesting. The flavor of almonds apparently is due to cyanide. So they said if you go to an area and you smell almonds really strong, get out of there. Because someone's released cyanide, yes. But so you know they say that all parts of stone fruits, and an almond is this type of stone fruit, contain cyanide in small amounts. Probably not enough to kill you, you know, unless you ate 1,000 almonds at one time, perhaps. I know it's only like on apple seeds. I read once it was 170 apple seeds have enough cyanide to kill a person. So, but they taste like almonds too. Peach pits and prune pits, they all taste like almonds because they have various amounts of cyanide.
I'll be going out from
Is black walnut tree, a black walnut tree treated the same way as a walnut tree? Do you have to do anything different with it? Or? I've got a black walnut tree, that's what I'm asking.
Well, that's interesting. So you have a California black walnut.
I have no idea. It was at my grandparents' house when I inherited. It's probably like 30, 40 years old. The trunk's about like that, and it just throws out walnuts like crazy. They're all full of worms, but.
Yeah, worm-wise, believe imidacloprid or Captain Jack's, spinosad, Captain Jack said, but Bruce should stop that. That's supposed to be a major problem in California, the worms that get into walnuts. You know, black walnuts are not recommended for here. They're supposed to need more cold, but again, if you live near any riverbeds, they should do well. I remember when I lived in Pasadena, we had a lot of black walnuts in that area. Then I moved down here and I didn't see any. The essential walnut is an English walnut, and they said that that was one of the ones they developed back in the 1940s and 50s. They called it the the Santa Barbara series. I guess they developed in Santa Barbara for lower chill areas, and Placentia came out of that, and so did a lot of other walnuts. But the native California walnut is not supposed to do well in most areas of Orange County. We're not cold enough, but you might have it. In Pasadena we have it. Okay, macadamia nuts. These are from Australia, or are they New Zealand? I can't remember now. One of those two places. Now there's they consider two species of macadamias. Not that it's a big deal. It's hard to tell them apart, but there's Macadamia integrifolia and tetraphylla. Macadamia tetraphylla. And the way you tell them apart is that integrifolia, the leaves are in whorls of 3. So you see at each level there's 3 leaves, and tetraphylla is in whorls of 4. You see this branch, they're in whorls of 4. So there's a lot of hybrids out there that will show both characteristics, and this one is showing both. Whorls of 3 and whorls of 4. The tetraphylla is supposed to be a little spinier than the integrifolia, and true to form, this leaf has got fewer spines on it than this one does. So the most famous macadamia being sold as a cultivar is Beaumont, and Beaumont is a hybrid between the two. So on some branches you do see the whorls of 4 and the whorls of 3. This is a seedling. Let's see, I got it off. Because in my house we're growing Beaumont, Dr. Fenton, and Conte, and Beaumont certainly does show off both things. Now, the other thing about, the integrifolia, I believe, I'm getting mixed up. One has cream-colored flowers or yellow flowers, and one has pink flowers. I can't remember which is which. I know the Beaumont blooms pink, and the Conte blooms yellow. I think it's the tetraphylla that has the pink flowers, but I'm not positive now. The one thing to know about macadamias is they are in the Protea family, or Proteaceae. Something like that. And members of that family can't handle soluble phosphorus real well. So if you fertilize them, be careful. I went around my yard with a broken bag of 15 once, and I was throwing it around the yard and I go, whoops, got too close to the macadamia, and true to form, my 3 macadamias turned yellow within a couple months from that. And at our nursery once, one of my employees threw some chemical fertilizer into the pot. All the leaves just burned right off, just burned off. They regrew, and now they look fine again. But you have to be careful. If you have any phosphorus in there, I'll make sure it's organic. So organic fertilizers, no problem. This is 612, which is a good formula with the lower phosphorus. Our soil in Orange County's got plenty of phosphorus. You don't have to worry about phosphorus in the ground. And the Macadamia or Protea family does not need much at all. So be aware of that, not to do too much. I've had customers, before we really knew much about that part of the thing, we had customers tell us, tree is really yellow, what do I do? And we couldn't make it turn green again, all I have to do is wait it out. So apparently they had thrown on a chemical fertilizer, and we didn't know that back 20, 30 years ago that was a problem. But we certainly do now. Now from seed or from grafted or from cutting grown plants, it usually takes them about 5 years to produce nuts. When they're about 8 to 10 foot tall and 6 to 8 foot wide, they all seem to start production. You probably get more and a better quality nut if you get a grafted or a cutting grown plant. But finding those nowadays, at least around here, is not easy. We may have to start grafting a few, except I don't have my mother plants anymore.
Are they fast growing?
From seed, the first year they're real slow. They might hit less than a foot. Second and third year, they'll do about 2 or 3 foot a year. They're not slow, but not speed burners either. So I have when my trees were about 15 years old, they were just a bit over 10 foot tall.
Wow.
So not real big. They like a lot of water. They're drought tolerant, but they won't flower or make nuts if you keep them on the dry side. They like it really wet to bloom and make nuts. Now there's different styles of production. Most of the commercial types bloom late winter, spring, and when they bloom, you can smell the fragrance from 2 houses away. I remember my parents had one in their front yard. It's actually my neighbor's tree next to my parents' house that my dad planted. And you can, right when you turn onto their street, you can smell the tree when it was in bloom. So mostly they bloom winter, spring, and then the nuts generally fall off in late fall and winter. It's a little earlier in the tropics, but late fall into winter here.
Is that the end of the orchids?
Beaumont, the hybrid one, seems to be able to make nuts any time of the year. But most of the other ones, like there's the famous California commercial variety is Cate. I don't know how to pronounce it, C-A-T-E. However that's pronounced, Kate or Cate. But that one, real heavy bloom in the spring, and all the nuts fall off within 2 weeks in December, which makes it easier for them to harvest. The Cate is also what they call a paper shell macadamia.
Here's your macadamia nut.
Okay. So it's the shells on that one are on Cate are thin enough you can break them like you break pecan shells. So if you put 2 or 3 nuts in your hand with Cate and you crush them real hard, you'll break the nuts open. Whereas most macadamia nuts, you need some good pliers. I mean, I have pliers that have they're 17-inch pliers, and you can set them up so they don't close all the way. And that's the easiest way to crack a macadamia that we've seen. I've had all the different 2 or 3 styles of macadamia nut crackers, and none of them have worked as well as that. And generally, when you harvest macadamia nuts, you let them fall on the ground. Unless you have parrots in the area, when they'll steal them all. But you let them fall on the ground and then pick them up, peel off the green husk. Cat took away. So generally they have the shell. They've got a green husk around them, which splits open when they're ripe. So you can kind of tell when they're ripening on the tree. They start splitting on you, and then the meat's inside in the middle. So generally when you harvest them, you peel the husk off so they can dry better. And then what'll happen is that after, what I do is throw them in a box, throw them on top of my refrigerator, and then after a few weeks you can shake the nut and you can hear the meat rattle inside. So the meat shrinks away from the shell, so it's free of the shell. Then you crack it open and it falls right out. If you break them open right after they're off the tree, it's like trying to get the meat out of a coconut. It's all stuck to the shell. So let them dry a little bit, then crack them open. You can bake them if you want, or roast them if you want, but they're really good. I mean, I love macadamias raw. They do have a very coconutty flavor. And I've had quite a few.
I'm sorry, Gary. Is there any other processing that you do to the nut after you?
Well, if you want it to last more than a few weeks or a few months, then you need to roast them. But if you don't care, or just eat them within a few months, they're good without doing anything at all. Just let them dry.
I've got a macadamia nut tree, and the one thing that I've learned is that you can't put them in a baggie if they're still in the shell, because they'll get humid and they'll get mildewed. And I did that 2 years ago. I wasn't thinking, and I just gave somebody a bag. I'd already peeled them and gave them the bag, and like within 3 days they were
All moldy.
moldy.
And when they go bad, they pick up a very bitter flavor. Okay, let me think.
Is there a good time of year to trim them? Because it seems like mine, just for the last 2 years, has always been blossoming at one time or another, and it's just like you figure it'd be like between seasons you could trim them, but there's been like no between seasons.
Yeah, macadamias are interesting though, because they form flowers on really old wood. So if you haven't seen a macadamia tree grow before, and they have really dense wood, I mean that wood is hard to saw through. That's really tough wood to cut. But on the older branches, it seems like when the branches may be 3 or 4 years old, they bloom and make nuts hanging right off the older branches. The new growth doesn't have anything on it. It's usually further down the stem where they make the nuts. So, I don't know, the books I've read and the articles I've read, there's very few little pruning that's done on them, other than make a nice strong structure in the first part, but they don't do much pruning on macadamias. They seem to make, I don't know, I haven't read too much of the newer articles on macadamias. If anyone's done any new research to show that a certain method of pruning is better than another. We've had quite a few customers tell us that they plant the seeds from their macadamia nut trees and get trees that make good nuts. So we're not too worried about selling seedlings, but I'd like to get a hold of some of the better varieties and start grafting them and see. The only variety I have in stock right now is Cannon that we're doing cuttings of it, but cuttings are a pain. Now that we have seedlings this size, we'll probably do some grafts. Because cuttings take about 6 months to root. And they're really poor rooters, so painful. We haven't seen much bug problems on macadamias I can remember.
Squirrels love them.
Yeah, squirrels, rats, parrots. But they're pretty enough to put in the front yard. They're definitely an attractive tree. Much better than carrot wood. If you know what a carrot wood tree is, this is the better replacement, because at least the things they drop don't squish and you can eat them. Okay, any questions? That's all I have.
Hazelnut's having a shot here.
As far as I know, no. The other one that has a shot is chestnut. But you gotta be near a riverbed to grow that one because it does need some more cold. But I tried growing chestnuts, but I couldn't get good plants to my suppliers. They're always dried up. We have a lot of people asking for pistachios. The trees grow fine. The shells tend to be empty. They said you really need to be hot, hot, hot. You know, they said the best place for pistachios is probably near Las Vegas. But they grow a lot. You know, commercially they're all near Fresno where there's more water. Here, and the problem with pistachios, you need a male and a female. So we used to sell male and female trees, and now there's a ornamental pistachio called the Chinese pistachio that's all over the place, and they make little nuts. In fact, one of our customers had emailed us from a hospital saying that some kid had eaten all these red berries off this tree, and so they emailed notes to everybody, all the horticulturalists, asking what this tree was, and it was Chinese pistache, so nobody worried about it. The berries were edible. So they make little tiny nuts that supposedly you can't eat and actually taste decently, but they're small. Chinese pistache, which are in the same, pistachios are in the same family as poison oak. Kind of interesting. Of course, the same family is mango trees. So.
Can you post plant like 3 different type of nut trees? You know how you always recommend putting something like 3 or 4 feet apart, and then maybe have like a pecan and almond and something else?
I wouldn't hesitate. I mean, it may not play out in the long run, you know, especially with pecans and walnuts since they get this big around. But I'd do it just for the fun of it. Yeah, almonds no problem at all. There's like peaches and macadamias. I did that. I had put 3 together. I mean, the companies who I used to get them from are all gone. That's the problem. I used to, you know, now I had a Dr. Fenton, and Dr. Fenton is. These are all seedlings I do of Dr. Fenton because I love that one. It's got a it's a macadamia that has a defective shell. So when the nuts come off the tree, you take the husk off and it's already cracked. The shell is already cracked, so you just open it up and eat the nuts. So you don't have to crack them. And the meat on the Dr. Fenton is the sweetest macadamia I've ever eaten. But that company, Pacific Tree Farm, is long gone. I don't know where Dr. Fenton lived. It must have been a tree at his place. So these are all seedlings of Dr. Fenton. Now I will tell you, it doesn't produce as much as my Macadamia or my Beaumont, so it's not the greatest producer in the world, but just having nuts that are already cracked when they come off the tree is kind of interesting. And the fact that they're very sweet. Now Macadamia had the biggest kernels on average that I've seen. And plus it was a paper shell macadamia, so it's a real thin shell. But I can't find a source of Cates. There used to be a macadamia nut farm down in Fallbrook, but they're gone. So I'm not sure what happened. I guess it's just not as profitable to grow them here. And they used to sell the trees here. But I'll look around, we'll take some trips down to San Diego, see if we can find someone who's doing that. Okay.
What kind of production can you expect on like a 10-foot macadamia tree? Like number of nuts?
Remember the old shopping bags? About half full. So I don't know how many, that might be a gallon's worth off a 10-foot tree. Probably more than it's good for you to eat. But, Yeah, and we, in our house with 3 trees, you can probably fill it, and total amount of room it took up maybe 12 by 12, 3 trees. And unfortunately we had a rat in there, but I would imagine the total production per year would be about a full shopping bag. Now, just so you know, on our first year pecan trees, we actually got 1 nut on 1 tree. And then second year, we expect them to do about 20. That's what we usually see. So this is now coming to its second year. First year, all you have is this stem, this straight stem with no side branching. But second year, we expect to get about 20 nuts. Third year, I haven't really had them past 2 years before we sell them. I haven't grown them in the ground. But so you do get something fairly quickly on these grafted ones, and the almonds certainly do fine. So if we have any cold at all. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A quick avocado question. Do you think it's too early in the year? Is it early in the year for them to be blossoming already, or is it normal?
We've had a lot of awesome blooms this weather.
Yeah,
You
because
can tell.
my house is just like covered in, it's still buds, but you can tell they're gonna open up.
It's
Probably
just
the
a-
rain will slow down a little bit. And it's just going like crazy. My birthday's got
I'm
already
thrilled. When's
200 fruit on it, starting to come also.
Oh my God.
You hear about the honey water deal?
Please talk to Barbara and
So if
get
you
her
want
how she
more
does
food
it.
on your
In a
cow
minute.
trees when they're in bloom,
Because she
spritz the flowers once a week with
It's her
Oh, yes, I remember you talked about that, I think, the
Not too
avocado.
much words and.
This is
Yeah,
notes
because
of
it's,
the
And